Erev Tov, Bruchim Habayim l'Universitat Tel Aviv. And how wonderful to be back after 2 years in this beautiful hall. Good evening, members of the Board of Governors, honorees, distinguished guests. Welcome to all of you who have come to be with us at this honorary degrees conferment ceremony at Tel Aviv University's 2022 International Board of Governors meeting. We'll commence the ceremony with the academic procession. I invite the deans of Tel Aviv University to enter the hall and take their seats in the front row. Professor Eyal Zisser, Vice Rector. Dean of the Katz Faculty of the Arts, Professor Eran Neumann. Dean of the Fleischmann Faculty of Engineering, Professor Yossi Rosenwachs. Dean of the Sackler Faculty of Exact Sciences, Professor Tova Milo. Dean of the Lester and Sally Entin Faculty of the Humanities, Professor Gali Cinnamon. Dean of Innovation in Teaching and Learning, Professor Liat Kishon Rabin. Dean of the Buchmann Faculty of Law, Professor Yishai Blank. Dean of the George S. Wise Faculty of Life Sciences, Professor Abdus Salam Azen. Dean of the Koller School of Management, Professor Moshe Tzviran. Dean of the Sackler Faculty of Medicine, Professor Ehud Grossman. Dean of the Gershon H. Gordon Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor Itai Sened. And Dean of Students, Professor Dorit Neumann. I now invite the officers of Tel Aviv University to enter the hall and take their seats on the stage. Ms. Dafna Metar Nechmad, Chairwoman of the Board of Governors. Professor Ariel Porat, President. Professor Mark Steif, Rector. It's my pleasure now to invite tonight's distinguished honorees to enter the hall. Mr. Mark Carney. Professor Cornelia Cori Bargmann. Professor Sir Michael V. Berry. Mr. Eric J. Gertler. Mr. James S. Gertler. Professor Bernd Huber. Ms. Jody Cantor. Professor Katalin Karikov. Mr. Solomon Liu. Professor Yehuda Reinhardt. Professor Jürgen Renn. Iranian American Jewish Federation of New York, represented by Robert Kahn, the Vice Chairman of IAJF. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Before we commence this evening's ceremony, we'd like to send our best wishes to Professor Barbara Engelking, who, due to health reasons, was unable to be with us this evening. It now gives me pleasure to invite the Chairwoman of the Board of Governors, Ms. Daphna Meitar-Nechmad, to address you.
University leadership, governors and friends, distinguished honors and guests, when I opened this ceremony the first time last year, we were still under COVID restrictions, could not host all of our international awardees. I am delighted that this annual event is now back to normal as a large global fest. Everyone who knows me knows I feel passionately about philanthropy and about the power of giving. Tonight, I would like to briefly describe to you another aspect of giving, about how the university is preparing its alumni to give back to society. We pioneered a special program, perhaps the only one in the world, that instills a social consciousness in undergraduate students as part of their required curriculum and with full academic credit. Called Tau Impact, the program has trained over 8,000 students in the theory and practice of helping the community, benefiting about 300 organizations and about 60,000 people. In 6 years' time, participating students have given 250,000 skilled hours to their academic and field work in the environment, women's rights, urban renewal, mental health, digital literacy, educational and enrichment, and dozens more subjects and causes. It's a win-win project because not only does the university expand its own positive influence on Israeli society, but it sends its graduates out into the world and into their careers with a sharpened social worldview that will keep creating benefits. As 1,000 more students receive similar training, the effect will be exponential. Which brings me to the honorary of this event. They are all driven by deep social consciousness, whether in the areas of academia, business, civic service, or philanthropy, and their contribution is boundless. They give the world their smarts, ideas, breakthroughs, and tireless work in the service of a better tomorrow. We thank you for coming to Tel Aviv University in Israel. We thank you for your stellar achievements, and we mostly thank you for expanding the wonderful inspiration circle of giving. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphna Meitar-Nechmad. I now ask the President of Tel Aviv University, Professor Ariel Porat, to address you.
University leaders and colleagues, governors and friends, distinguished honorees and guests, welcome to our first international honorary degree ceremony in 3 years. How wonderful it is to share with you this celebration of achievements. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to acknowledge a great friend, proud Jew, and loyal Zionist who is no longer with us, the late Mr. Adolfo Smolash. He was the benefactor of this magnificent auditorium we are sitting in, together with his wife Miriam, who just turned 102. עד 120. Both Adolfo and Miriam received honorary doctorates from Tel Aviv University. Their daughter, Aida, a second-generation Tau governor, arrived from Argentina to share in our commemoration and to inaugurate yet another of the family's many generous gifts to our campus. Thank you, Aida. Now I invite you to watch a special tribute to Adolfo's spirit and memory. Tel Aviv University awards honorary degrees to individuals who make a significant contribution to academia, science, and society in Israel and around the world. Having served as head of Tel Aviv University's honorary degree granting committee for the past 3 years, I know how difficult it is to select awardees. At the beginning of your deliberations, it always seems as though we will never be able to decide because of the large number of worthy candidates. Surprisingly, however, after the committee has discussed the candidates, we reach a consensus regarding the individuals to whom Tel Aviv University will award an honorary degree. I checked and found that the first time in history that an honorary doctorate was awarded was in 1478 by the University of Oxford. There are several persons who hold records for the number of honorary doctorates conferred on them. According to my research, Nelson Mandela stands in first place, rightfully, with 50 honorary doctorates. The Dalai Lama has been awarded a similar number. I mention this because these towering figures received honorary doctorates not because of their academic achievements, and certainly not due to a personal contribution to the institution that awarded them the degree. Rather, they were recognized for their huge social contribution, unique personal courage, and very special personalities. What characterizes the granting of an honorary doctorate to these two individuals is that the true honor was not of the recipients, Nelson Mandela or the Dalai Lama, but rather of the institution that granted it. This is how I feel about you, the recipient of the honorary degrees today. Among you are amazing scientists and scholars, thought influencers, business and community leaders, and generous philanthropists. All of you have made an extraordinary contribution to society. I thank you very much for the honor you have given us, Tel Aviv University, for agreeing to receive an honorary degree from us. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Porat. I now invite Maya Levinson to speak to you. Maya is one of the recipients of the Emergency Fellowship Fund for Ukrainian students and researchers, which Tel Aviv University established in March with the generous help of donors to express solidarity with the Ukrainian people and provide a safe academic haven for refugees. Maya.
Hi, hello. My name is Maya. I'm 20 years old and I'm a 4-year medical student who come from the south of Ukraine. Firstly, I would like to mention that for me it's a great pleasure, as a great honor to be the part of such incredible community for this evening. This is possible just with the help of the special scholarships for Ukrainian students that are provided by the Tel Aviv University. It's my second time in Israel. The first time I came here was 2 years ago as a participant of the Taglit, a special 10-day program for young Jewish adults that help us to explore the country, the Jewish culture, as well as the Jewish history. One day we came for a guided tour to the Jewish People Museum, which is located here in the area of the Tel Aviv University. And after that, I was sitting on the grass nearby the campus, and I told my twin sister, one day I will definitely study here. Of course, I would like to arrive and to join to the program in rather different conditions, not leaving my country, my family, and my friends in the case of the war. I came alone here, and it was the most difficult decision I have ever made, because my mom, my younger sister, she's just 4 years old, and all of my friends stayed in Ukraine. My trip here to Israel through Romania, through Moldova, with so many other refugees was definitely a nightmare which I have never forgot, but it gave me one of the best experiences in my life. This scholarship that I received from the Tel Aviv University has not only helped me to move to a rather safer country, but also made one of my biggest dreams to come true. It opened the doors for me in a quite young age to the science and gave me the amazing chance to do the research in a modern and well-equipped lab in the Sackler Medical School. I'm incredibly grateful to my PI, Dr. Merav Cohen, who is one of the most awesome women I have ever met in my life. I'm totally sure if your area of interest, as well as mine, is the interaction between immune cells and cancer cells, you should at least search in the internet your name and surname. Sorry, it was just briefly advertising for my lab and my PI. Don't worry, I will send her a check after that. But honestly speaking, Merav helped me a lot with my documents, with all of the paperwork. And she doesn't look at me just as a visiting student. She lets me be the part of the amazing research, amazing project that I'm really excited about. Moreover, I have no doubt that within a year, or maybe even less, it will make a kind of revolution in a scientific world, and of course the papers will be highly published, so wait for them. We live in the 21st century. We investigate the target therapy to treat the cancer. We explore the space, but there are still the wars all over the world. It seems that humans do not learn from their previous mistakes. I believe with all of my heart that when the war is going to be ended, everyone will have a chance to see that Ukraine is not only the country of the brave people. It's a country with ancient history, a country with wonderful countrysides and the most beautiful golden fields of wheat. It's the country of the most non-aggressive people who respect their borders and the borders of the neighboring countries, as well as their cultural heritage. All of Ukrainian students who came to Tel Aviv University are the new generation, the generation that will definitely do everything to make Ukraine one of the best countries in the West Europe after the war is going to be ended. All these stories should have a happy end, and mine is not an exception. I came here to Israel, I'm studying, I'm making new friends. all over the world. Moreover, I spent a Passover with my host Israeli family, and I still go to visit them during the Shabbat evenings. Of course, all of my heart and all of my soul belongs to my country and stays with my family and with my friends. But at least now I'm happy that the knowledge and the friendship that I will get here at the Tel Aviv University might be useful for my country when I will come back home. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Maya Levinson. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the conferment of the George S. Wise Medal. I invite Professor Ariel Porat and Daphne Mehta Nechmad to please come forward to the center of the stage.
Well, I'm Canadian, and so growing up on the prairies, the western part of Canada, my biggest dream was to play in the NHL, the National Hockey League, and I held on to that far too long. I turned to wanting to see the world. I turned then to wanting to understand the world, and then with time wanting to change the world. Getting into economics was the experience that would help me to understand how things were connected in the world and how we can change that world for the better. It was the response to the global financial crisis. There was a process that was set in place initially by the G7, but really by the G20 to ensure that this wouldn't happen again. It taught me a real lesson about how to come to solutions that actually get implemented. I'm very much inspired in the work I'm doing with respect to climate change by youth. I mean, I'm inspired and pressured and sometimes terrified by the energy that's there and the urgency that's there, but it's absolutely right. You know, I wake up to that and try to do what I can through the financial sector to meet their expectations. I know my great good fortune. I come from the far north of Canada. I had a strong family, I had great teachers, and that gave me my chance in life to end up Governor of the Bank of Canada, Governor of the Bank of England, to be in those positions at times of real consequence, times of crisis, but also opportunity. I felt that what I was doing was what, in some respects, was made to be. It's a tremendous honor to be associated with Tel Aviv University, bringing together so much power in terms of research, teaching, the commitment to education that it exemplifies, the interdisciplinary nature of the university. I do want to acknowledge my great friend and one of my heroes, Jacob Frankel. Jacob and I worked closely over decades, I won't say how many, but over decades, to try to use finance to make the world a better place. And so to be associated through this honorary degree with the values of sustainability, of solidarity and dignity, human dignity that George Wise lived, exemplified in Tel Aviv University, continues to this day, is a deep, deep honor, and one can only be humbled by it.
I invite Mr. Mark Carney to come forward to the center of the stage. Tel Aviv University conferred the George S. Wise Medal upon Mark J. Carney in recognition of his achievements spanning decades as a visionary central banker and eminent thought leader in the economic and financial worlds. His outstanding stewardship of the British economy in his role as governor of the Bank of England, particularly during the turbulent Brexit debate. His skillful navigation of Canada's economy through the financial crisis of 2008. His foresight in urging world governments to prepare for the economic and financial repercussions of climate change and efforts through the United Nations to redress them. And his warm friendship towards the State of Israel and his financial and academic communities over many years. Thank you, Professor Porat and Daphne Metar-Nechmad. I now invite Mr. Mark Carney to address the audience.
Justin, look at that. Everything arrives just in time at Tel Aviv University. It's fantastic. Look, this is a tremendous honor. And as I said a moment ago, I'm deeply, deeply humbled by it, and I'm deeply humbled to share the stage with my fellow honorary degree recipients. And I'm deeply honored to be associated with George S. Wise. And there's a great friend of Jacob Frankel and mine, Jean-Claude Trichet, who is here as well. A great friend, Tommaso Padua-Schioppa, who was a great central banker, who's a finance minister, economist, sadly passed. And he would call the triptych of, at the time he said gentleman, he means gentle person, person of honor, that the motto of that person should be to learn, to earn, and to serve. Now, George Wise learned. He was a graduate of Furman and Columbia universities. He was a scholar of Latin American politics. He was an entrepreneur in America and Israel. And he was a servant of people, both at the highest levels of academia as president of this great university, and also to the most vulnerable in the world in his battle against illiteracy in Mexico. He was a man who understood the relationship between value and values, someone who understood the roles of markets in society. And this is something that I've tried to work on throughout my professional life. I know that markets are the most powerful instrument that we've created, and that their dynamism can serve great purposes, but I've also seen from time to time how they can be indifferent to human suffering and blind to our greatest needs. And that's why a default to laissez-faire, a default just to markets, can leave us unprepared for the future. And that was my experience as a G7 governor, both in Canada and the UK, working through what felt like a series of crises with a common cause, which is to view the price of everything to be the value of everything. We live in a time that can confuse market values with human values, a world that knows the price of Amazon, the company, to the nearest cent, but doesn't put a value on the Amazon region until it's stripped of its foliage and converted into farmland. When we value the present much more than the future, we're much less likely to make the investments needed today to reduce the big risks tomorrow. So, as Jacob and I and Jean-Claude lived and experienced, despite 8 centuries of financial crises, global banks didn't build adequate rainy day buffers before the global financial crisis, and the cost fell on regular people. And despite varied and ample warnings, we didn't invest properly in healthcare capacity before the pandemic. And despite overwhelming scientific evidence, we've been underinvesting in addressing climate change. These tragedies of the horizon won't be addressed by fixing market imperfections alone. But we can turn this around by recognizing, as the chair reminded us, that values come from people, not markets. By setting clear goals, as this university does, we can close the gap between what we value and what is priced. We can make markets part of the solutions to our greatest problems. Indeed, given the scale of what's needed to address climate change, we won't get to net zero, we won't stabilize the climate without innovation, investment, and profit. And that's why it's critical to build a market in the transition towards net zero. A market in which every financial decision takes climate change into account. And I'll finish on a note of hope, which is that at the 11th hour, and it is very late, this process has begun. Over the course of the last 2 years, the proportion of global emissions covered by net zero objectives of countries has risen from less than 1/3 to over 90%. Over 7,000 of the world's largest companies again, in the past 2 years, have begun building net zero plans to get their emissions down consistent with 1.5 degrees warming. And the financial system is now organizing itself to provide the enormous investment, over $100 trillion, a big number in any room, the enormous investment required. A coalition of the world's largest banks, largest insurers, pension funds, came together in Glasgow to commit their balance sheets that are worth over $130 trillion, an even bigger number, commit those balance sheets to finance the transition, to finance that innovation of the private sector, the innovation, the genius of markets, to turn what is an existential risk into one of the greatest commercial opportunities of our time. That's value in markets fulfilling people's values. And that's a process in the great tradition of this university and George Wise. So again, thank you for this tremendous honor and for what you do every day.
Thank you very much, Mark Carney, for that address. Thank you, Daniela Lugassi. Daniela is one of Israel's most prominent opera singers and is certainly the leading and most popular pop opera singer in the country. And that was, of course, I Could Have Danced All Night from My Fair Lady. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conferment of the Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa. I ask Professor Ariel Porat and Professor Mark Steif to please come forward to the center of the stage.
I'm a scientist, and I grew up in the space era in the 1960s when there was tremendous excitement about putting a man on the moon, especially excitement among children like me. And so we wanted to discover new things. We understood that science was something that could lead to changes in the way that we saw the world. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was young, but I realized early that that was probably not going to happen. But being a scientist is the next best thing, and I have never regretted it. For a scientist, the thing that I've been most excited by is the moments of discovery, the moments of understanding something that no one had understood before. I'm at a stage in my career where I've been very fortunate to have many years of being a scientist, and now I'm being asked to help lead new scientific initiatives to help other people do the best science that they can. So I'm working now as the head of science for a philanthropy called the Zuckerberg Initiative that is trying to create a new kind of biomedical science through tool building and through changing the culture of getting people to work together in an interdisciplinary way. That's very challenging, but it's also very exciting. My advice to the next generation is be curious, be open, see what you can discover, learn from other people. Don't feel trapped in your own city or your own field or your own age group. There's such a wonderful world there to be part of. Tel Aviv University really represents what a university does to link the past, the present, and the future. So one part of a university is to look into our past, to look into our history, to look into our culture. At Tel Aviv University, we also look at the history of humans in anthropology and where the human species originated and how it moved around. And then we have the present, and Tel Aviv University is great in biomedical science, which is my field, where tremendous advances are being made today. And then finally, we have the future. And Tel Aviv University has an investment and an interest in the environment and in climate. And these are the big problems that we need to solve in the future. We really need to learn how to live on our planet peacefully with the planet and with the other creatures on that planet. And I see them moving toward that as well. I believe in education deeply. And I also believe that it is a human institution that has existed for thousands of years, and that fundamental to that institution is the relationship between the teacher and the student. We will not replace that, but perhaps we can make it better. Perhaps we can allow students access to teachers from other places using, for example, the new tools that are available now. I think what I am most inspired about right now is the young people who are coming up in my field and in other fields.
I invite Professor Cornelia Cori Bargmann to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Cornelia Cori Bargmann in recognition of her accomplishments as a prolific neurobiologist and geneticist, her standing as the definitive world authority on the mechanisms underlying the neuronal basis of complex behaviors, her seminal contribution to elucidating how the nervous system is wired, which has garnered her an unparalleled record of major awards, her excellence as an inspirational scientific leader, including most recently in her role as President of Science at the Zuckerberg Initiative, and her warm, long-standing ties with Israel's scientific community, including researchers at Tel Aviv University, by conferring upon her the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
I'm principally a theorist. I spend my life scribbling, doing calculations, making pictures on the computer, but I do occasionally like to play, and I like to play with light. And I'm looking at the pattern of the light that's refracted through the irregularities of this glass. So just one little thing that I play with. I grew up in a family that was not educated. But anyway, I became fascinated by astronomy. I dreamed of having a telescope. And when I came to do a PhD, I realized that it was theoretical physics was my natural intellectual habitat. But it was really only after I arrived in Bristol as a postdoc, after a few years, before I dared to say to myself, I am a physicist. Heroes is interesting. There are different types of heroes. Isaac Newton, Einstein, Maxwell, Galileo, we all worship. In science, you really have to follow your dreams. You have to follow a subject that you're fascinated in, whether it's fashionable or not, whether it's a subject where it's easy to get funding or not, but at the same time, you have to learn the technicalities of your subject. I go to the University of Tel Aviv so often. Your brilliant scientist, Yakir Aharonov, he discovered a beautiful formula with which I've enjoyed a 40-year love affair. This has had a big influence. Particularly pleased, I would say proud, with this event being honorary doctorate, that I have this formal association with the university where he has worked for such a long time. Isaac Newton said it, standing on the shoulders of giants. He wasn't noted for being a modest man, but was exactly correct with that. Is the reason science has been so successful is the communal human enterprise. It's the nearest thing that we have to a group mind.
I invite Professor Sir Michael V. Berry to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Sir Michael Victor Berry in recognition of his world renown in the field of theoretical physics, his impact on classical and quantum physics, which has garnered him dozens of accolades from institutions around the world. His discovery of the Berry phase, a concept that could have far-reaching applications in quantum mechanics, optics, and condensed matter physics. His dedication spanning decades to fostering new generations of young researchers, many of whom are today influential scientists in their own right, and his long-standing warm friendship toward Israel's academic community, including his fruitful collaborative ties with Tel Aviv University scientists, by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
My biggest dream has always been to make a difference in society. My first leadership role was a captain of a sports team, or when I was president of Students' Council, and that really was one of the first platforms where I learned what leadership was all about. In my career, I've been able to pursue my passions. It's led me to writing a book. It's led me to running a media company. It's led me to public service multiple times, and where I had the opportunity to lead the Empire State Development for New York State. I have many heroes. At the top of the list are first my parents. My dad showed me what it means to have a great work ethic. My mother was a maverick. She raised 3 boys. And then, of course, my uncle Mort Zuckerman, who always taught me to reach for the stars. I've had a deep passion for Israel. My relationship with Tel Aviv University started when my uncle Mort Zuckerman wanted to create a STEM scholarship program that would lead to collaboration between the United States and Israel in the sciences. No doubt, Tel Aviv University plays an important role in Israel. It's a great educational institution. It's training the next generation of leaders. And it's also training the next generation of entrepreneurs that will help to ensure that Israel stays at the forefront of innovation in this world. When I look at the many things that I've been able to accomplish, I think I'm most proud of being a good son to my parents. When I was informed that Tel Aviv University wanted to present an honorary doctorate to me, I was surprised. As I sit here, I'm just humbled. I'm humbled to be honored and bestowed with such a degree by Tel Aviv University. All in all, it's such a privilege to have a long-standing relationship with Tel Aviv University, and one, quite frankly, I hope lasts for many more years.
I now invite Mr. Eric J. Gertler to come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Eric J. Gertler in recognition of his dedication to public service, including his passionate commitment to the economic development of New York State and New York City in diverse civic roles. His success in navigating New York State through the COVID-19 crisis and stimulating its economy. His standing as a respected business and media executive, who also serves as trustee of the Mortimer B. Zuckerman Family Foundation and Institute. His dedication to fostering and strengthening the relationship between the United States and Israel, and his many contributions to Israel in academic, economic, social, and cultural spheres, including his service as a governor of Tel Aviv University, by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
Philanthropically, our biggest achievement is Zuckerman's STEM program, which we bring scientists, postdocs from the United States and North America to Israel. And we also fund the Brain Game, which is bringing Israeli principal investigators and build them 21st century labs in Israel so they could go on and do their work in Israel. The most significant thing in my work from a philanthropy point of view is that I have the privilege to really fund opportunity. We have the ability to fund current postdocs in Israel, future Nobel potential laureates, fund future public leaders, and just to be in a position to give them opportunity and go watch them achieve a lot of that opportunity has just been something that's just been wonderful to be associated with. To me, it's all about people and relationships. I was given the opportunity to be a philanthropist from my uncle, and Again, just working with just wonderful, passionate people in the sciences and public leadership in other Jewish causes has just been something that I've so enjoyed and been so fortunate to be associated. And what inspires me the most is I am a relatively young, liberal, Jewish American Zionist who has great passion for the State of Israel, and I like to continue to do, in whatever small part I do, in building bridges between North America and Israel and among the Jewish people. I'll give the advice that my father-in-law said at my wedding, that life is a bit of a steeplechase race. There's lots of ups and lots of downs, but the important thing is to stay on the horse. And whatever my advice to the next generation would be, life is a lot more of a marathon than a sprint, and just be in it for the long run. I've always fundamentally believed that education is the silver bullet of society, and that to be associated with the largest Israeli university, an area that is just vital for its population's success, it's a privilege. And if it could spur me to do a better job in what I do, more power to it.
I invite Mr. James S. Gertler to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor James S. Gertler in recognition of his accomplishments as a philanthropist and as a business and investment leader, his humanitarian spirit in serving as trustee of the Mortimer B. Zuckerman Family Foundation and Zuckerman Institute, which further a broad range of Jewish cultural, educational, and welfare causes in Israel and the US, including at Tel Aviv University. His active involvement in a range of public and Jewish organizations in the United States and in Israel. His valued leadership in building bridges between the US and Israel, and his warm friendship toward Israel, particularly the academic arena, including his service as a governor of Tel Aviv University, by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University. Thank you, Professor Porat and Professor Steif. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll hear the university's unique ensemble, Multi-Piano. They'll perform two movements from Land of Four Languages, a suite on Israeli folk songs by composer Aryeh Levanon. The movements are At Dawn, based on a traditional Yemenite melody, and Debka Rafiach, a Bedouin dance put to Hebrew words. Multipiano was formed exactly 10 years ago by Professor Tomer Lev, who was then the head of the Buchmann Mehta School of Music, with 3 of his outstanding piano students. After 10 years, 15 international concert tours along 4 continents, the ensemble is widely recognized worldwide. Tomer Lev was joined by Berenika Glixman, Nimrod Meiri Haftel, and Eyal Peltz. Thank you, Multipiano. We now continue with our ceremony. I ask Professor Ariel Porat and Professor Mark Steif to please return to the center of the stage.
I'm an economist, and when I first started at the university, I must say I don't have any large academic background. My original plan was to become accountant, tax accountant, or auditor, or something like that. During my education, I became more and more interested in these fascinating academic issues. For example, why is there unemployment? Why do some countries prosper and others do not? I must say, originally I didn't have any plans to become an academic. It was quite true that being an academic must be quite boring, but it turned out that it's a quite fascinating job. As president of the university, I have to make sure that the university is in a unique, strong position to face all these challenges which will come up in the next 20 years. This is the challenge of digitalization, it's increased competition between higher education institutions, raising enough finance for the university, and also being able to adapt to new scientific and academic developments. Every person gets inspiration if you can make a contribution to progress, to positive developments, and if you can create new things, you can develop new ideas, and that's really what inspires me in all of my jobs, that making a contribution, I give inspiration to other people, and moving forward, I think that's the thing which really gives you the kick. Getting this award is a great honor for me, and getting a honorary doctorate from one of the best universities in the world, in particular Tel Aviv University, is really outstanding, and I'm very proud of this honor, and very grateful.
I now invite Professor Bernd Huber to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Bernd Huber in recognition of his contribution as an esteemed academic leader and expert in public finance, his achievements as president of Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, which, under his direction, has become a top university in Germany and internationally. His committed public service, including as member of the Scientific Advisory Board of Germany's Federal Ministry of Finance. His endeavors to strengthen German-Israeli academic ties, particularly his spearheading of a broad strategic cooperation agreement with Tel Aviv University, and his warm friendship toward the university and its German Friends Association over many years, by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
when I was growing up, it was before the internet, and when the newspaper landed at our house, it was like a big occasion. It was like a message from the outside world and a world that I wanted to be a part of. So after college, I went off to law school thinking that that's what I should do for a living, and I ended up dropping out because I wanted to be a journalist. I had left the power and glory and prestige of law school, and my parents were completely horrified. But as I sat at my first desk, at my first office in Washington, D.C., I was an assistant at Slate magazine. I'd basically been hired to, do the floors and the windows, but I felt like I was home. I felt like these are my people, and I just want to be around journalists all the time. I'm proud of something we do every day as journalists, which prove that stories matter. They matter for democracy, they matter for fairness, they matter for painful truths that we don't really want to confront. And again in my career, I've seen that when you document the truth and when you show the facts, people do care and society does respond. I actually do have a real hero in my life. My grandmother's name is Hannah Cantor. She's 97 years old. She's a Holocaust survivor. She never had much schooling. She grew up very poor in Poland, but she is absolutely my bedrock and my hero. So there's a really fine line when you're a journalist. You're not an advocate. You're not an activist. You're not taking a position. Like the Harvey Weinstein stories were not written from a feminist, crusading position of we need to change everything. And we weren't trying to go out and get Harvey Weinstein. What we were after is the truth. I'm incredibly grateful to Tel Aviv University for this honor. It means a lot to me. For so many reasons. I hope what this means is that the university, which stands for knowledge and stands for inquiry, is recognizing that journalism and great universities have something in common, which is that we pursue the truth no matter what.
I invite Ms. Jodi Kantor to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Jodi Kantor in recognition of her pivotal contribution to civil and cultural discourse as an investigative journalist and author, her uncompromising determination to reveal hidden truths that spur national debate, shift attitudes, shape policies, and change lives. Her courageous expose of sexual harassment that gave rise to the worldwide Me Too movement and transformed a generation. Her numerous accolades as a celebrated writer, including the Pulitzer Prize, and her commitment to social justice rooted in Jewish and universal values, by conferring upon her the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
I'm from Hungary. I studied there. I got my PhD degree there. In Hungary, first there's a short RNA, which was antiviral compound, and then later I worked with messenger RNA. at the University of Pennsylvania, where I worked for 24 years. Later, I went to Germany, and for 8 years, I worked at BioNTech, and I enjoy every minute of it. My biggest dream was to be a scientist. I just imagined that they are going to work and every day they discover something that nobody knows. As a graduate student, I started to work with RNA, and later when I realized that messenger RNA can be made, I decided in 1989 that I will use messenger RNA for therapy. I am very proud that I remain the same curious, down-to-earth scientist I was always, still curious, still very excited, seeing data and thinking about what it means. My biggest hero is my biology teacher who knew everything, and I dream about that. I will be like him, I want to be like him, to know everything. And I'm just trying right now to inspire others, because it's a great thing to be a scientist, because every day you are facing a new questions, a new puzzle, and then it is such a joy when you get a solution and you understand something which nobody understands. I always most excited when I can see the data. I do an experiment, or my colleagues now performing an experiment. That inspires me always to move on and do more. For all kids, the most important thing to find what they like to do. The most important maybe in the future is for the mentors, teachers to give guidance for the students and direct them towards different kind of problem that could be solved and they can focus and work on, and that would be more important than to tell them the material, because those can be accessible on the internet. I was excited when I learned that I would receive an honorary degree at Tel Aviv University. That was very significant and important. Thank you, Tel Aviv University, for the degree awarding me. It is a great honor. I am humbled. This is the great opportunity to visit Israel first time in my life and receiving this degree from this very prestigious university.
I invite Professor Katalin Karikó to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Katalin Karikó in recognition of her immense contribution to world health as a visionary biochemist and biotechnologist, her scientific curiosity and perseverance across 4 decades in the quest to prove mRNA's potential to treat disease, despite facing challenges, setbacks, and skepticism. Her groundbreaking co-development of an mRNA-based vaccine platform that offers hope not only for ending the COVID-19 pandemic, but also for revolutionizing the delivery of safe and effective vaccines, therapeutics, and gene therapies for diverse conditions, and her serving as a role model for female scientists by conferring upon her the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University. I now ask Professor Porat and Professor Steif to please take their seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Shalva Band is comprised of 8 talented musicians with disabilities. The group was formed in 2005 at the Shalva organization that supports and empowers individuals with disabilities and their families in Israel. This amazing and inspirational band has performed on the Eurovision stage, on other stages around the world, and in Israel. A band that continues with all its might to perform and release original music. And they are with us here tonight. Please welcome Shalva Band with A Million Dreams, a song from the film The Greatest Showman.
John Lennon once said, "A dream you dream alone is only a dream, but a dream you dream together is reality." We dreamt together, and here we are. Don't stop dreaming, no matter what people say.
Close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care if they call me crazy. We can live in a world that we designed. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. However big, however small, let me be part of it all. Share your dreams with me. We may be right, we may be wrong, but I wanna bring you along to the world I see, to the world we close our eyes to see. We close our eyes to see. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest color fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. For the world we're gonna make. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make. For the world we're gonna make. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make.
Thank you so much to the Schalver Band. And now I will ask Professor Porat and Professor Steif to please come forward to the center of the stage.
My biggest dream has always been to help others. I've always been there for family, friends, employees. That gives me a lot of pleasure. I went into business basically at a very young age. I lost my father when I was 12 years of age, and I needed to be there to support my mother. That's really what drove me. I was 18 years of age. People were prepared to give me a chance, and by the time I was 27 years of age, I already took the company public. It was a very meteoric rise. The achievements that I'm really happy about is what I've been able to do for my family, my employees, my shareholders. I'm not in the business of letting people down. I have spent time on government committees, advising prime ministers, chairman of a company, the largest retailer in Australia, that employed 160,000 people. But of course, it's all about my family, you know. You teach them right from wrong and respect, and that's really where I come from. The challenge for me is to stay healthy, enjoy life, keep my friendships, support the institutions that I support. One of the institutions was Mount Scopus College, where I was chair for 27 years. It's one of the largest Jewish day schools in the Southern Hemisphere with 1,600 children. I met a gentleman by the name of Jack Lancer. Jack brought me into Tel Aviv University. The academics that come out of there are just second to none. So, you know, Tel Aviv University is recognised globally. I'm 77 years of age now. I have a fair amount of experience in a lot of different walks of life. I'm inspired by the success of Israel. It's just astounding to fully appreciate what's been achieved in a short period of time. It's a great honour to receive this award today. I would have never dreamt as a young boy that I'd be here today. It's something that will be part of the legacy.
I invite Mr. Solomon Lew to please come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Solomon Lew in recognition of his renown as an industry titan in Australia, his vast accomplishments in the textile, apparel, and property development markets, which were highlighted when he became the first Australian to be inducted into the World Retail Hall of Fame in 2016. His philanthropic record in supporting important causes, including Jewish continuity and education, healthcare, sports, arts, and culture. His establishment at Tel Aviv University of the Lew Center for Consumer Behavior, and his abiding friendship toward the State of Israel by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
I grew up in Israel, but had my high school education in Germany and then later in the United States. I've always had the idea that one day I'm going to do something that relates to the Jewish people. With my interest in Jewish history, I became eventually a professor of Jewish history. I've always had the urge to create things, to lead things, to run things. And so I created the first center for Jewish history, Jewish civilization. And eventually, 2 years later, I became the president of Brandeis University. I ran the university for 17 years. And then I had the good fortune of getting to know Mortimer. And eventually, I took on the job as the president and CEO of the Mandel Foundation. My greatest satisfaction in doing this job is the ability to help people, help institutions, both in the United States and in Israel. My biggest hero is, without any doubt, Chaim Weizmann. I sort of fell into that subject because I was in Israel during 1973, actually during the war. Weizmann had left some 25,000 letters. These were all collected in 23 volumes. That led to the idea of writing a biography. I can state without any hesitation whatsoever that without Chaim Weizmann, there would be no state of Israel today. I've always led something or other, even as a teenager. I don't wake up in the morning thinking of myself as a leader. And the question is, how do you use those positions to improve life, to improve the life of all citizens in the United States and in Israel, regardless of who they are, Jews, non-Jews, it doesn't matter. If I had to give one piece of advice to young people today, it would be, whatever it is that you study, you ought to include the humanities in your study. Without the humanities, you can't really understand people, you can't understand cultures, you can't be human without the humanities. The fact is that Tel Aviv took the idea of including the humanities in many areas of what Tel Aviv University is teaching. To me, this is very satisfying, actually inspiring, because I think Tel Aviv can also serve as a model for many other institutions in Israel and abroad.
I invite Professor Yehuda Reinhardt to come forward. The Senate of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Yehuda Reinhardt in recognition of his exceptional record as a path-breaking scholar of modern Jewish history and champion of the Judaic and Zionism studies field. His profound contribution to higher education, including his immense success in his former role as president of Brandeis University, his insightful leadership of the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation, which, under his guidance, advances Jewish, Israeli, and educational causes, including unique initiatives in the humanities at Tel Aviv University, and his profound connection with and friendship toward Israel. By conferring upon him the degree of Dr. Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University.
When I was a boy, I was interested in astronomy. I had my telescope and observed the stars. And when I finished school, I wanted to become an astronomer. So I started to study physics. Eventually, I got most fascinated by the history of science, so I turned from a physicist into a historian of science. This is an incredibly broad field, and I focused on the revolution of the early modern period, Galileo in particular. Then I turned to Einstein, and I worked on both of their work very intensely. I've been able to see some of the larger structure of the development of knowledge. That has been my goal, and to some extent I've been able to contribute to reaching this goal. This builds, of course, on the work of my mentors, Peter Damo, Wolfgang Lefebvre, Yehuda Elkanah from Tel Aviv University. I've been working in their tradition. What's inspired me is an intellectual environment where people ask questions about meaningful problems. I have had my mentors that provoked me to think in this way. This is what I find inspiring and stimulating. Give people a chance to unfold their curiosity while they are studying and not just focus on the blocks that you need to know in order to get your professional training. So this flexibility, this intellectual mobility, that is something that needs to be fostered. By the way, and Tel Aviv University was a great place where Yehuda Elkanah started such programs many years ago, interdisciplinary programs, and that's a line that I value very much that should be followed more. So the first advice is fight for your freedom to choose and to prioritize the knowledge that you find meaningful for yourself. The second advice would be to fight for the future of humanity on this planet. I love Tel Aviv University. It's one of the most exciting intellectual places that I know. They are some of the best historians of science in the world. It's an intellectually very lively climate, so I have lots of exchanges with them on all kinds of levels. We always talk very intensely, and since many, many years, I love to come back to Tel Aviv University.
I invite Professor Jürgen Renn to please come forward. The Senate at Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Jürgen Renn in recognition of his standing as a world authority on the evolution of knowledge, his decisive role in elucidating the development of modern science and its relevance for contemporary life, his influential and thought-provoking publications which have enlightened the academic community and the general public alike, his institutional leadership and passionate commitment to making historical sources accessible to all, as evidenced by his organization of numerous exhibitions and his co-founding of the Open Access movement, and his staunch promotion of Israeli-European academic ties, particularly his engaged, fruitful, and decades-long collaboration with Tel Aviv University scholars and scientists by conferring upon him the degree of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa of Tel Aviv University. That concludes the conferment of the degrees of Doctor Philosophiae Honoris Causa. Thank you, Professor Porat, and I invite the Rector of Tel Aviv University, Professor Mark Steif, to address the audience.
Good evening. Ms. Daphna Meitar Nechmad, Chair of the Board of Governors, Professor Ariel Porat, President of Tel Aviv University, distinguished guests, dear families, and of course, our honorary degree recipients, good evening. Recent events have proved us time and again that the value and significance of the power of knowledge. Scientists and the life sciences are harnessing the power of knowledge to minimize the effect of the global pandemic. Research in social sciences and the humanities are implementing the power of knowledge to analyze and understand human behavior during these troubled times. And computer scientists are applying the power of knowledge to develop innovative solutions to cyber challenges at both national and international levels. Of course, these are only a few of the many examples we could choose to point out. In addition, to the power of knowledge, technological development has also experienced unprecedented growth at this time. It is no secret that accelerated development has challenged the academic world and raised many new questions regarding the role of universities and their prerogative to the power of knowledge. As we know, in the past, research was almost exclusively the purview of research universities. Commercial companies would then use the results of this research in order to develop a range of technological solutions. Nowadays, the division between basic and applied research has blurred. The time gap between the research laboratory and the production floor is also shrinking due to this prodigious technological development. As a result, many commercial companies, such as Microsoft, Google, SpaceX, and others, are now themselves spearheading basic research in a variety of fields, such as mathematics, engineering, computer science, quantum theory, artificial intelligence, space research, and others. Likewise, the traditional dependence of commercial companies on universities providing trained professionals is experiencing a decline. Many organizations are thus running their own human capital training programs according to their particular commercial needs. Add to this the enormous progress being made in information technologies, specifically those that make effective distance learning possible, that support all kinds of pseudo-academic initiatives and provide viable alternatives to in situ education. In these circumstances, it would appear that the role of universities as a source of knowledge is in question. But is it really the case? Can we imagine a world in which knowledge is shaped only by commercial interests and not by independent thought and academic research free of any such considerations? Can we conceive of long-term human progress without an independent university system providing a broad and accessible knowledge base that would withstand the test of time and not focus on specific short-term solutions? Can great ideas alone change lives without that broad and comprehensive knowledge base and absolute academic freedom to investigate the unknown and strive for truth? In my opinion, the answer to these questions is a resounding no. And our challenge today at Tel Aviv University is how to convey this message beyond the boundaries of our campus. Here on campus, we plant seeds with a profound and meaningful germination process that may test the patience of the outside world. Competition, stress, and the clamor for innovation and the next big thing may prompt potential students to bypass university studies and plunge straight into production and the workplace. Therefore, in this day and age, in order to fulfill their role, universities need to persuade the public, and especially their potential students, by pointing out their relative advantages. They must prove that they are irreplaceable, and they must do so by means of constant self-examination, self-improvement, and adaptation to the needs of society and of their students. Here at Tel Aviv University, we strive to promote innovative teaching methods and spur the implementation of learning platforms that will be accessible to all those willing to draw from the great wellspring of knowledge that we offer. Our unwavering motivation to move forward and overcome obstacles underscores the enormity of the hour and of the task at hand to continue creating and innovating. Hence our acknowledgement this evening of the achievements of the honorary degree recipients, each and every one in their respective and varied fields, aims to convey our appreciation as an institution determined and committed to shaping the future. For the inspiration you all provide, each in your own way, for our journey, a tireless journey of trial and error, change and adaptation. Spearheaded by human capital, we should look squarely into the eyes of change, understand its significance, and be willing to renew ourselves in the process. We must continue to experience the full intensity of the events taking place around us, to identify opportunities and mind reminders as we stride forwards together towards the unknown, propelled by our belief that it will be better than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Steif. We shall now award the Honorary Fellowship. I invite Tel Aviv University President, Professor Ariel Porat, to come forward and ask Daphna Metar-Nechmad, Chairwoman of the Board of Governors, to join him.
Many people have asked me what is the reason for the success and what is the secret of success amongst Jews, wherever they are in the world. And my first answer is always education. We established the Iranian American Jewish Federation in New York about 20 years ago. This was during the Second Intifada, and our first focus was to help victims of terror and also the soldiers, providing some relief for the soldiers. We realized that education is also an important part of helping the Israeli community, and that's when we focused almost 30% of our budget for various types of education. And in order to help someone, we believed that giving them the education is like teaching them how to fish rather than giving them a fish to eat. We started working with Tel Aviv University almost 20 years ago, during the first year of our establishing Iranian American Jewish Federation, working with Professor David Menashri, who was a great friend of our community. Tel Aviv University is a premium academic organization that has a diverse type of training, education for various people. And they not only get book education, they also learn interpersonal skills and they learn how to work with others. So all in all, I believe in Tel Aviv University, and I know that anyone who gets educated by Tel Aviv University will be successful in life.
I invite Robert Kahn, the Vice Chairman of IAJF, to come forward to the center of the stage and receive the award on behalf of the Iranian American Jewish Federation of New York. The Executive Council of Tel Aviv University resolved to honor Iranian American Jewish Federation of New York in recognition of its profound commitment to the State of Israel and Jewish continuity, its long-time mission to cultivate new generations of Jewish leaders, safeguard Zionist ideals, and support communities in need. Its championing of a plethora of social, educational, medical, and welfare projects that strengthen the people of Israel. Its commitment to instilling Jewish pride among diaspora children and youth. And its generous and visionary support over decades of important academic and physical projects at Tel Aviv University by conferring upon it an honorary fellowship of Tel Aviv University.
Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been near. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Little darling, the smile's returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here we come. Sun, sun, sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalva Band and Daniela Lugassi, for that rendition of the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun. I would like now to invite Professor Cornelia Cori Bargmann to respond on behalf of tonight's honorees.
Israel is a new country that is part of an ancient tradition. And Tel Aviv University is a new university that is part of an ancient tradition. That is the tradition of the university, one of humanity's great achievements. The oldest universities in the world have existed in their current form for almost 1,000 years, longer than almost any government on earth. It is with great pride and honor, ga'avad ve'kavod, that I represent the honorary degree recipients with these remarks tonight. Tel Aviv University has conferred this honor on us, and in doing so has spoken of its values. I speak now to reflect back what you have said to us. What is a university? It is an institution with a commitment to teaching and to a specific form of truth, the truth of scholarship. It is fundamentally a secular institution in its commitment to those goals, not the goals of religion or government authorities. Scholarship, whether in science, history, or the humanities, is committed to knowledge, not for a purpose, but for its own sake. Every human institution is a product of its own place and time and the people in it. But universities strive to set those personal elements aside to develop a body of knowledge based upon evidence, documented, subject to criticism and disproof, expanding to include new insight, and transmitted to students and scholars alike. I have met President Ariel Porat and have seen firsthand his joy in scholarship reflected here. To keep their freedom from control by authorities, universities need supporters who believe in their mission. Among the honorees tonight are supporters of Tel Aviv University and other institutions. Eric Gertler, Frank Gertler, Solomon Lew, the Iranian American Federation. They do not impose their own will on what emerges from the university, but they make it possible. The Board of Governors, who is with us today, are also supporters. We celebrate the university and its supporters. From the same root as the word university comes the universe. One of the three institutions that were joined to form Tel Aviv University was an Institute of the Natural Sciences. Natural sciences are a way to understand the physical world through theory and measurements, logic and intuition. They begin with the physical and chemical, and then the 100 elements in the periodic table that combine to make the world and every form of life within it. First by the dozen to make a sugar, then by the thousands to make RNA and proteins, then by the billions to wind into the strands of DNA, and from there to cells and organisms. Today, you have honored the chemistry of life discovered by Katalin Karikó and the astonishing biology of the brain that makes us who we are. And indeed, our brains can understand the world and the universe and its magnificent rules, as exemplified by Michael Berry, who has created entirely new ways of describing the relationship between space and time. We celebrate the universe and its wonders. And finally, there is the universal, the same word root. From its beginning, scholarship strove also to document and understand the works of humanity, reflected in our history, our laws, and our economic systems, the domains of the other two institutions that joined to found Tel Aviv University. The government, events, laws, and economic systems built by humans are newer and more fragile than those created by biology. They can only be strengthened by rigorous study. Today's scholars have wrestled with these complex questions and their implications. History that is being studied by Barbara Engelking and Yehuda Reinhardt, who have understood the role of the Jewish people in Europe. Human systems are examined by Bernd Huber, the financial systems of labor, capital, and taxation. Within these and other areas of scholarship, we look for guidance toward universal questions. What are our shared human values? How do we best achieve them? When do we fail, and why? The university, the universe, the universal. We are privileged to take part within this, but with that privilege comes a responsibility, the duty to share with the world. We must remember that the philosopher Aristotle was also the tutor of Alexander the Great, engaging with the world. Jürgen Renn, driven by his insight into the history of science, is a champion of sharing knowledge openly across the sciences and humanities worldwide, not leaving it locked away in the open access movement. Mark Carney strives to develop financial systems that will mitigate climate change, linking human and non-human activities to our benefit. Aristotle also spoke of the importance of kairos, which is speaking at the right moment to make change. And today, kairos has also been honored with Aristotle, and it can take great courage, as we see with two of the honorees. Jodi Kantor, a journalist, uncovered a deep exploitation of women, denied and ignored, and by saying so, she changed it so it is not accepted. Barbara Engelking brought to light the wrongdoing of the Polish people during and after the Holocaust. And for that, she has been persecuted, personally and legally. That is her commitment to kairos, to telling the important truth. Finally, sharing can also bring great light. And on that note, I want to end again with Katalin Kariko, who discovered a secret of natural science, how the body recognizes RNA as its own and accepts it. She guided this discovery out of the university. She shared it with the world. And she brought it into the biotech industry to allow the creation of new vaccines against the pandemic of the past 2 years. Billions of people have been vaccinated by RNA vaccines in the past year, a truly astonishing achievement where the work of the university was joined with the work of companies, with the work of governments, with all human institutions. We seek knowledge for its own sake, but we rejoice when it benefits humanity as it is shared and implemented, especially at an entrepreneurial institution like Tel Aviv University. So let us celebrate the achievements of these vaccines, of the science, of the healthcare providers, of the governments, of the people who made sacrifices to help bring them to us, and the exceptional service to humanity that all of this represents as we close this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cornelia Bargmann. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach the end of tonight's ceremony, I'd ask you to please rise for Hatikva, our national anthem. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Our ceremony has indeed come to an end. I'd like to thank Noam Zlatin, the musical and artistic director of the evening, and all tonight's fantastic performers. And thank you for being with us. You're all invited to a dessert reception in the square just outside the auditorium. Laila Tov, Toda Rabba.